interesting logistics of this presentation. Today we're happy to present automating content conversion to DITA using Stilo Migrate, including a demonstration of how Migrate can be used to convert legacy content from FrameMaker to DITA. Our presenters are Burnham, CEO of Stilo International, and Helen St. Denis, Conversion Services Manager. Before we get started today, I'd like to go over the usual housekeeping routine. First of all, although you all can hear us, I hope, we will not hear you. If you have questions, please type them into the chat or questions panel in the meeting window that should be in the right-hand panel, the slide-in panel of your GoToWebinar screen. We will also have a time to answer questions at the end of the presentation, so do type your questions in there. Any questions that you have we'll get to at the end of the presentation. And in addition, we'll be running a survey at the end of the webinar that will pop up after it's over, and we'd very much appreciate your feedback if you have a moment to answer a few questions. And finally, we are recording this presentation, and after the webinar we'll be sending out the usual follow-up email with a link to that recording as well as a copy of the slides. And so with that, I'm pleased to give you our first presenter today, Burnham.
Okay. Thanks very much, Tom, and thanks for the opportunity of presenting today. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending. Let me begin by introducing Stilo International. We're a public limited company. We're actually listed on London Stock Exchange, and we have offices in the UK and in Ottawa in Canada, where our technical team is based. And we're quite well known for OmniMark, which is a high-performance content processing language and development platform, which is used for high-performance HTML and XML content processing, and used by many sort of large publishers worldwide. And it is from experience in developing this language that we actually then decided to develop Migrate some 5 or 6 years ago. And Migrate's our cloud conversion service. So with Migrate, we can convert from various source formats, including Frame and Design Word, Rubber Help, other versions of XML and HTML as well, and we convert to DITA. And to date, this has been used for legacy content conversion, although we are seeing more opportunities to implement Migrate into authoring workflows in the production environment for SME import of original content. And to date, we've converted something like 500 or more than 500,000 pages of content to DITA. And we work with a whole range of companies, large and small, many of which have tens of thousands of pages to convert, others which have only a few pages or maybe a few documents to convert. Just like to make the point up front that Migrate is a very scalable solution, and we'll be showing you how it works today. So during the course of today's presentation, I'll actually be talking about some conversion options, that sort of choices that traditionally organizations have, whether or not to do conversions in-house or to use outsourcing companies. We introduced and developed Migrate as an alternative to both of those options, and we'll be today providing with an overview, a demo, talk about a couple of case studies and give you some pricing guidelines as well. So hopefully you'll get some value out of today's session, and we'll be taking questions at the end, as Tom said, so we'll push ahead and move through this at a pace if you don't mind. So before getting into conversion at all, and deciding which approach is best for you, you've got to have a few things in place first. So typically you've decided upon your content strategy. Your publishing processes are in place. Your authors have a pretty good understanding of DITA. You know how much content you want to convert and when. These are not easy questions to answer necessarily. A lot of content might be well past its shelf life after 3 months, others after maybe if you're developing or producing, manufacturing machinery, that sort of thing, could be a 20-year life. Semiconductors, you could be talking about a 3-month life. So you've got to very much consider what the content lifecycle actually is, and you need to have a good appreciation, or it helps to have a good appreciation of the consistency and quality of the legacy content. And often you'll be surprised as you go along just what really sort of how inconsistent typically your content may well be. Another general point to make is that conversion to DITA is not straightforward. You might get exceptions to this rule, but generally it isn't straightforward. And in any conversion exercise, there's typically three phases. There's the pre-conversion prep, where you might have to basically try to tidy up your content before trying to convert it, or using scripts to convert it, and then at the end of it all, cleaning it up post-conversion. So the effectiveness of the technology used to convert the content will massively affect the manual cleanup, either the sort of a manual cleanup and the prepping that might be necessary. So if your conversion technology is, for example, 80% effective versus 95% effective, there's going to be a fourfold increase in the manual effort involved. So it is important to consider this. Not so much, it's not so important maybe if you're working with low volumes, small volumes, but certainly as your volumes increase, then clearly automation comes into play more effectively. Another general principle is that in all of these phases, subject matter experts are involved. So it doesn't matter whether or not you think you can maybe give it to someone in-house to do, or to work with some outsourcing agency and throw it over the wall, if you like. The fact is you still need to be involved as a subject matter expert. You need to get involved in this conversion rule specification at the outset. You need to understand what complexities are going to be existing in your current content, and so how that actually translates into some of the mapping rules that you might want to be putting in place. You need to take decisions up front, but not you want to implement it as specializations at the beginning or maybe later in the process as you go through. You will likely then be involved in the pre-conversion prep phase, and you would be involved in the post-conversion cleanup phase as well. So you can never really escape it, I'm afraid. It's quite a time-consuming exercise to be involved with, and generally, for most people, quite a short-lived exercise as well. So it's something that you're doing for the first time, generally, and maybe for the last time as well. And so it's really quite useful if you can, I think, sort of learn from the experience of others and bring others into the exercise for you to help you out. Let's have a look first of all at in-house conversions and typically what's involved here. I guess they'd be generally sort of classified as having sort of minimal budget behind them, where typically spare resources will be used, i.e. that's yourselves maybe sitting on the bench perhaps in some quieter periods if you have such a thing. But that's how generally resources will be viewed. You have to write your own conversion scripts, maybe using XSLT, some combinations of that. There's quite a few sort of desktop tools out there and available. We'll be showing you going from unstructured frame today to DITA. There are tools out there. There are tools out there from Adobe and others which you could use, but you would have to be writing your own scripts around that as well. You'd have to do your own cleanup and QA. Typically, this would involve, in the conversion process, you'll be doing quite a bit of cutting and pasting typically, and you'll be doing it ad hoc as time allows. So typically not too pressured environment, typically low volumes, which is fine, but it doesn't scale well. If you want to be converting tens of thousands of pages, you really need to have something, I think, more automated than this. But all in all, it's always a good learning exercise. If you're using tools and converting things to DITA, you learn a lot about your own content. You learn a lot about DITA in the process as well. So all in all, it can be a good thing. And then there's the traditional route for higher volumes, where maybe it's a labor-intensive operation where you might have a lot of inconsistencies in your source content, and where maybe strict deadlines are involved. Typically, you don't have the resources in-house. You've got some budget available, and you go out to do this exercise in some sort of batch methodology. So you agree the conversion spec with the partner writes the conversion scripts, the partner project manages the conversion. Maybe the partner uses offshore resources of their own, But you would undertake the pre-conversion prep, as I mentioned earlier. You typically batch documents for conversion, so you'd have a content freeze in the production process, or the authoring process, I should say. And then the partner will undertake the conversion and then the cleanup for you, returning it to you. You're QAing this, and you're getting involved in the cleanup too, typically. And then you notify the partner of any required changes. And then you repeat this exercise. So this can be really quite frustrating. This is not an untypical sort of workflow here. But you can appreciate that if you're QAing content and then trying to communicate changes, have those changes implemented by your partner, and then have it come back to you again, and then you find other changes you want to implement, that can be terribly frustrating, and especially if you're working across different time zones as well, that can be doubly frustrating. So it was understanding these sort of issues which led us to the development of Migrate. Migrate is our cloud conversion service. So when you use Migrate, we actually provide you with your own dedicated conversion portal to which you would upload your documents. You'd have basically this will be pre-configured according to your own requirements, whether you're using DITA 1.1 or 1.2 or versions. We can have input pipelines for particular document groups. You can upload single or multiple files into this, and then just to follow this workflow through, if we were taking, say, FrameMaker, as we'll be showing you today, we would upload a FrameMaker file. It would be analyzed by Migrate. And what we're doing there is essentially really we're creating an intermediate XML hub format. We're taking the characteristics of that file. We're looking at text and tables, images, doing a lot more than just styles. We're looking for any indicators, any cues of what might make sense in the document. So we look at patterns and context as well. We annotate those characteristics, and we map those characteristics to the target DITA. At the same time, we produce a warning report of things that maybe you should be looking out for in the conversion process. And then we will also do a character count on the document. And this would indicate how many conversion credits would be required to convert the document. One conversion credit actually equates to 1,000 characters. So in FrameMaker terms, that's about a page. And so the system would ask you if you want to actually proceed with the conversion. So this is a pay-as-you-go system. And unless you say yes, we want to accept those credit charges, we will then convert the document. So this is happening in real time, on demand, 24/7. You convert the document. You then look at the results, and you decide whether or not it's giving you what you want. And this is the key to Migrate. You further refine the conversion rules yourself. As an SME, you guide the exceptions. You can easily configure new rules. We'll show you how to do that using the rules editor. You can reconvert a document as many times as necessary. It doesn't cost you anything else or any extra to reconvert. And then you can clone and modify rule sets if you've got different document groupings as well, which you want to separately identify and process. And all the while, in the background, Stilo is able to support you, and we can always sort of, dip into your portal to help out on specific issues, to diagnose specific issues as and when required. And then at the end of it all, you will be getting high-quality DITA generated. It's schema generated, DITA, so it's valid DITA every time. We can configure this how you like, so we can produce DITA topics or specialized topics, DITA maps or book maps. We take FrameMaker drawings and we convert them to SVG, and we can take equations from Frame and Word as well and convert that to MathML. So a really important point to make here, which comes back to one of the earlier slides I showed, was that we have very advanced levels of automation in using Migrate, and here's some examples of that. It's just really important to understand this because it can make such a difference to the whole conversion process. So it's really over to you now, Helen, to talk about this, if you would, prior to providing a demonstration of the system.
Hi, thanks, Les. I just had to unmute myself there. Okay, so what this slide shows is some examples of the sorts of things that we can accomplish with automation that we're sometimes told can't be done automatically. So, for example, one of the issues that comes up a lot is tables. Tables that perhaps have complicated column spanning and row spanning. Trying to convert these things to XML or to DITA specifically by hand can be time-consuming, error-prone, laborious. It's just a nasty job. Nobody likes doing it. Migrate will do it automatically. The code has been written now and it will just work. So a table will go in with row spanning and column spanning and it will come out the same way without us having to do anything. Now, on the other hand, we quite often find that tables have been used in the input as a formatting technique. So you may have table markup around what should be a note or a list, just for presentation purposes. And we actually don't want the table in the DITA at all. Well, in that case, we can identify those tables and use a simple rule that will strip out all the table markup and correctly mark up the content that's inside the table. So either way, your tables can be handled automatically. You don't have to worry about them pre or post conversion. Now, when it comes to converting, as Les was mentioning earlier, we use a lot of information from the input format, including context. So a lot of automated conversions will take a paragraph style and map them directly to an element in DITA, and so do we. We do a lot of that because you can get an awful lot done in that way quite easily. However, there are times when that's not enough. So, for example, you might have something that's formatted as a numbered list. If that numbered list shows up in a topic that needs to be a reference, well, then it needs to be converted to a numbered list. But if it's in a task, it actually needs to be steps. Migrate can make that call based on where this numbered list occurs and mark it up correctly. Similarly for inline styling, so you might have little pieces of text that have been bolded. We can typically identify and correctly mark those up based on things like the styling, but also pattern matching in some cases, and context. So in which element do they occur? What are the words that come before and after them? We can use this type of thing to match these things correctly. We also give you the ability to configure the structure of your book map or your DITA map, so you can adjust the nesting level according to your wishes. You can choose to have a book map or a DITA map, or you might, for example, choose to have a book map with submaps at the chapter level. All of these things are configurable. And we also allow you to access information that may not be visible in the content flow. So, for example, if you've got index markers in your FrameMaker, we can automatically convert them to index terms. If you've got conditional text, we can automatically convert that to the appropriate DITA profiling attributes. Whether the conditions are visible or not in the input doesn't matter to us. We can identify variables, for example, in your input and convert them to conrefs or keyrefs. And we can also access content that's in the master pages or the headers and footers of your document. Quite often those places contain metadata that might be relevant. We can grab that and put that in the metadata of either the topic or of the map. So, and this is just a few examples of the sorts of things we can do through automation that you might not expect that we'd be able to. Thanks, Les. Okay, I am hoping that now you can see my screen. You should be seeing now the page of Migrate that you would see when you would first log in to your Migrate portal.
Not yet, Helen.
It shows a... No, not yet. Did hit share.
I think when you did that, Les's went away, but yours did not appear. Okay, I'm getting notes from presenters that they're seeing this, from attendees that they see it, so go ahead, I think. There it is.
Okay, good, 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 thank you. Okay, so it's just a little slow showing up. All right, thanks everybody, thanks for your patience. So this is what you would see when you would first log in. We've got a list of the documents that have been uploaded to your portal. In this case, you can see I've got the same document uploaded 3 times. This is what we typically do when we're doing a demo, but in real life you would never need to do that. You upload the document once, you can convert it and change the rules and reconvert it as often as you need, just through that one time. I've got it here showing different stages. So I'm going to just go quickly through the workflow, and then we'll have a look at the document that we're converting, and we'll look at its output, and then we'll see how easy it is to change what we want to change. So we would go ahead and we would hit upload. We would browse to our file. In this case, I'm choosing a single FrameMaker document, and I've saved it in .mif format. And I'm going to tell Migrate that it's a standalone FrameMaker document, and I'm going to hit upload. So Migrate is now taking that FrameMaker document and it's analyzing it. As part of that analysis, it is creating an intermediate XML file that preserves style information, markers, conditions, that sort of thing that we're going to use to set our rules on. It's also extracting any FrameMaker drawings that it finds and converting those to SVGs. It's converting any equations that have been authored in the FrameMaker equation authoring tool and converting those to MathML for us. And it's going to do some things like counting the number of characters in the text, because that's going to help us determine how many of our prepaid credits it's going to cost. So as you can see, it's finished analyzing, and it's got a red 16 here, so we know we're going to pay 16 credits to convert this document. So if we want to have a look at what the analysis has shown us before we go ahead, just click on the file name, and it takes us to the details page. It's counted 16,946 characters. That's just text, not spaces or anything like that. So that comes to 16 text credits. We've also got things like tables are counted. Those don't go towards credits. We've also got an image and a formula, but many people don't require those in the output, so in this cases we don't charge credits for those. If you do need them, we provide them, and those would come into the credits as well. At this point also, if there are any messages on the analysis, they would be here. We don't have any. Messages might include things like we let you know if you've got text boxes in your document, for example, because if you have text boxes, there's a chance your content may come out in just a very slightly different spot than you expect it to. We don't have any here, so let's go ahead and take the next step, and we're going to accept the charges for that document. So I've selected the document. I'm going to accept those 16 credits, and now my 16's turned black here, and there are 16 fewer over here. Now I have some rules in place here, so I'm going to select my rule set. There we are. You can see I have quite a few sets of rules on this portal because it's a demonstration portal. You would start with 1 or 2 probably, and you could create more as need be according to your requirements. Next step, because the rules are in place, is just to hit convert. So Migrate's going to take that intermediate XML format. It's going to take the rules that we've put in place and the schema for DITA 1.2 in this case for demonstration purposes, and some configurations to give us a book map, and it's going to create DITA. So it's going to work on that for a minute or 2, and while it's doing that, I'm just going to give you a quick look at the document that we've chosen to convert, so you'll have an idea what we're going to be looking at. So this is a document that we put together just really to show some of the things that we do encounter on a regular basis in our conversions of FrameMaker. So it's a normal document. It's got headings and it's got lists and so on. We've put in one of these tables with the column spanning and row spanning just to show. It doesn't have any particular meaning. All sorts of different inline styling. We've put in an equation. I'm pretty sure it doesn't mean anything. I just made that up. Any mathematician, please don't look at that. We've got a drawing, same thing, just for show. We put in some conditional text. So we try to get a little bit of everything in. And then as we go down, we'll see that we have some of the more challenging things that we see in our conversions. So, for example, in this case, we clearly have a topic that's going to need to become a task. Well, that's not going to be much of a problem. We can make this a task. What we have here need to be steps. So each of these, number 1, number 2, number 3, needs to be a step. If we click here, we can see that the paragraph style is numbered 1 here, numbered here, numbered here. No problem. It's pretty straightforward to say if a paragraph has the style numbered 1 or numbered, make it a step. That's easy. Where we come to a bit of a challenge is what's inside the step. So here we've got click no if this, click yes if that. These need to become choice elements. Below here we have ordered sub-steps. Do this, then do this, then do this. So these actually need to become different elements, but they use the same paragraph style. So we need to be able to differentiate them. Also, just because we really did try to put in a bunch of really annoying things, these letters are typed in. This is not actually a list. Somebody has typed in A dot use the directory, B dot click OK. So those are some challenges that we have to deal with because we're going to have to get rid of those. Those numbers or letters will be generated on output by the DITA publication system. So that's one of the challenges that we faced. And another one is, again, if we come back to the tables, this warning here, this note, is actually in the body of a table. Now you may not notice that by looking at it because it doesn't have any grid showing, but it's actually in a table for formatting purposes. So we need to get rid of that table and make this a note of type warning. And here we have, again, it's conditional text, and these are related topics. We made them conditional on being in the web help, which is where you typically find these things, and people tend to leave them out of PDF publications. So we're going to make these into related links in this case. And there's lots more stuff in there, but we don't have time to show all of it on a demonstration. So let's, from here, go and have a look at our converted output. So I'm going to save that file. And I'm just going to give it a different file name from the one I saved earlier. So you can see that where we had one FrameMaker document going in, we now have a DITA file coming out for each DITA topic. The file name is named according to the heading in the topic with a .DITA extension. All of that is configurable. We've got a DITA map file. We have a DITA val file because we've got some conditional text. We've got a mathml, and we have an SVG as well. So all of that from that one document. So let's have a quick look at it in XMetal. Close these and reopen them. So here we have our book map, which as you can see is nicely nested according to our rules. So the heading levels have been used to indicate how deeply nested these items should be. Let's have a quick look at some of the interesting things we pointed out in the input. So here we do have that table with the column spanning and row spanning. I'll expand it so we can see it a bit better. So all of that came out okay. The font size is a little big, so you can't really see these numbers as well, but the column spanning and row spanning is all there. Let's go down here and have a look at the steps. So here you can see we do have a task. We do have steps. Here we do have a choice. And here we do have substeps. So if I just put the plain text on for a minute, you can see that in fact the substeps have had those letters removed and the numbering is coming out as a result of the publication process. So that's all what we would like. If we go down here and we have a look at that note, so here you can see we have the note, and again, if we put the plain text on, we can see that we have no table here, but we do have a note, and it's the correct type. The type is warning. And then we've got our links underneath in related links. So generally speaking, I think we're reasonably happy with that output. However, we may find that we've changed our minds about some things. We've decided that instead of using a related links element, we'd rather have this type of link in a relationship table. So we could edit all of that, obviously, in XMetal. But if you have a lot of such links, or if you have a bunch of documents where this is the case, it's easier, quicker if you just automate that. So let's go back and we're going to look at how we would make such a change. So we click on the file name again and we hit the Edit Rules button. So at this point, Migrate is taking that intermediate XML format. It's taking the rules that we have put in place for this document, and it's going to open up the rules editor with a little view of what the input document looks like. It's going to give us a listing of the rules that currently exist, and it's going to give us a place where we can edit those rules or modify them. And here we are. Here's the rules editor. So here is our document, and as you can see, this gives us an idea of the structure of the document. So for example, if I click here on this piece of text, it tells me things like it's a paragraph. The paragraph style is title. That's kind of nice because it's easy to map that way. It tells me the annotations that have been applied to it. So p.book.title.main, that's making it the main title element of the map. Here's a rule that did that. So I click on there and it takes me to the rule. As you can see in this rule, it's simply mapping the style name to the element. And I just do want only one title of my map, otherwise I'm going to have troubles. And I can check up here to make sure that that rule has matched just the one time. So all good with that one. So that's a straightforward type of rule. If we go and we have a look at, for example, let's look at that. Here we have our steps. Here we have our choices. So again, we've matched according to the paragraph style, and then we've looked at the content. So if it doesn't have A dot, B dot in front, it's going to become a choice. If it does, then it's going to become a substep. So this is the way in which we use context, or at least it's an example of it. What we really are interested in, though, is those related links for this purpose. Really, we now want to go and change those into a relationship table. So here is a rule that has done it. Let's see where it's matched. So here. So what we've done is we've matched this because we've looked for an internal link, and we've looked to make sure that, in this case, we've looked for the condition. So it's the condition online is specified. And we've made it a related link. So all I actually need to do, I know that they've been correctly identified, all I need to do at this point is just change this to rel table entry. Hopefully I didn't make a typographical error. If I did, Migrate will tell me. It's good. All right, so I'm going to save that. As soon as it's done saving, there we are. I'm going to hit convert again. And that's going to take another minute or two, and then we'll be able to look at our revised output. So while it's working on that, I'll just show you a couple of other things that we did mention in the dashboard. We talked about rules. So we've got a set of rules in place for this document. They work pretty well and probably will work pretty well for all the documents in the document set that's like this. But we may have another document set that's similar but needs some things a little bit different. So we might want to make a copy of this rule set and just change it in some small ways. So what we can do, we can click here and go to our rule sets page, and we can choose the rule set that we want to copy and hit clone. So all we do now is give this a new name. I'll click OK. So what I have now is an exact copy of this rule set. I can go back over here and I can apply that rule set to any of these documents now. And now I can go ahead and I can open that in the rules editor. I can make my changes, save my changes, and grow a whole new rule set without ever affecting the one that I began. So I can end up with a group of rule sets according to my needs. The other thing is that what we are looking at is a small group of the documents that are actually on this portal. We've got them in something that we refer to as a basket. You might end up with lots and lots of documents on your portal. We do have at least one customer who have about 1,000 documents on their portal. You can imagine that having all those showing at once would be not convenient. If I were to show you, for example, all the documents that I have here, well, you can see that it's quite a lot and not really easy to work with. So I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to show the demo basket again. So we can make baskets according to our needs. Again, we go to the basket tab and we just hit create basket, give it a new name. Back to the documents. And now I can put any of these documents into a basket. Put that one into that basket. I can show just what's in that basket. Or I can go back to my demo basket and show these. And so that's how easy it is to just filter the view of what we need. And you can make baskets for any purposes that you need to. And we now have a reconverted document. So let's download it. Give it a new file name so that we can differentiate it. Just going to close all these files here so we open them fresh this time around. All right, so here we are. And we'll open up the book map again. And now you can see this is our new book map. As you can see, the relationship table is there. Let's pop it open in the XML view so we can look at it. Here we are. So here's our relationship table in the tags on view and in the plain text view. So that came out quite quickly. Now if we go back and put this back into the map editor, let's just have a look at where these links were in the first place. And you can see that the related links element is gone from there. So you can see that that is pretty quick and easy to make what could be a fairly substantial change in your documents. Very nice to be able to do that as you need, when you need, see the results right away. And if you change your mind again, you can always go back and make the change again. So that's more or less what I wanted to show you in the demo. So I'm going to pass it back over to Les now and let him take over from here.
Thanks very much, Helen, and hopefully everyone can see my screen now. Just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about why our customers actually choose to go the Migrate route versus other routes. And overwhelmingly, the one single reason is that it places them in control of the conversion process. So users can decide what documents to convert on demand with immediate results. And this is really important because you can schedule conversion jobs around your own personal production workloads, and obviously you're going to have your peaks and your troughs and your priorities and not, and it's great if you can actually just push them through one at a time, or you might have seen there also we can batch files together and process multiple files in one go as well. Another really important point is that it avoids the churn, which I talked about earlier, going back and forth with conversion partners when things aren't quite right and you want to further modify or tweak the rules. That can be quite a frustrating experience, but you can see using the rules editor you actually sort of get around that problem, and accordingly you can reduce the amount of manual pre- and post-conversion cleanup because you can tweak the rules quite easily and modify the rules so that you get a better quality of conversion coming through. It's a pay-as-you-go system, so commercially it's fairly risk-free. You can buy as many credits as you like and just keep adding to that, and then all of the time it's fully supported by Stilo in the background. Talk now about one of our users, is IBM. The central ID tools team at IBM put Migrate through its paces a few years ago, and IBM actually acquired a company called Sterling Commerce, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, and Sterling Commerce needed to convert their FrameMaker documents, about a couple of hundred books, into DITA. And what they'd been doing was using a traditional outsourced service, and they were also doing some DIY conversions in-house. So it was really quite good that, well, when Migrate was introduced into the whole thing, it could be compared directly against the outsourcing and in-house methods. So what we're seeing here is some metrics which we jointly presented with IBM a few years ago to North America. And what they were doing then was converting 20,000 pages of data over a 6-week period. And what we saw here was that on average a FrameMaker book was taking 24 hours, but using the outsourcing version, 24 hours to prep, 32 hours to convert, and then 16 hours to clean up. Compared with the total of, so in total, what, 72 hours or something to book. In-house it was taking them 40 hours, and then they used the Stilo Migrate option. And because they'd already done the pre-prep anyway, it only took basically a couple of hours to convert the books on average and to do the cleanup by using the rules editor. So it was really very straightforward. And so IBM are very, very pleased and began to recommend this throughout the organization. And we've undertaken many other conversions within IBM companies as well. Another sort of extreme example, if you like, forgive the pun, is where we were working with Extreme Networks, where they had a couple of guides. It's about 1,000 pages to convert. Again, this was FrameMaker to DITA. But it shows a good example. Now, this is a really wordy slide, so apologies for that. But I think it reads really interestingly. Our biggest challenge was time. We couldn't get out our files for several weeks during the ongoing product development process. They've been using an outsourcing provider, and they're getting a little frustrated. They're saying our previous conversions were not only incredibly long and expensive, they required several back and forth iterations to finalize output, which made the process even longer. In the event, they still end up with quite a bit of manual cleanup to do. So this is quite a common story. With Migrate, we delivered files, had them returned in a couple of days. We found a few small tweaks, we ran them through the automated tool again, and then they had a finished section on delivery that works well with the CMS, and they were very, very pleased. It was interesting. That was what we would call an over-the-wall job, if you like. It wasn't really worth their while setting up a portal for a couple of books, but it's interesting to note that Extreme now have their own portal, which they've subsequently implemented because of other acquisitions that they've been making. The engagement process with Migrate is fairly straightforward. Typically, this is the way it works. A customer will provide us with a sample document. We just say, okay, send us a sample file, 20 or 30 pages. You can actually go to stilo.com/migrate and you can upload the file to there. And we would analyze and convert it, and we would jointly review the results with you for your WebEx. It's quite interesting. We can, basically discuss the findings we make from the document. You can envisage your content in DITA for maybe the first time. And then we'll provide you with the results for your own testing and evaluation purposes, and that's all a free of charge service that we do. Then if you're interested in taking it further, we have another session lined up where we would agree the configuration and tailoring requirements, and that might be some emails back and forth, but typically a 1 or 2 hour session in WebEx would start pinning that down. And the good thing is with Migrate, you don't have to know all of these answers up front, because we can always reconfigure or tweak the rules as we go along as well. But obviously, the more you know up front and the more you can specify things up front, then the better the conversion process, or quicker the conversion process is. So typically, we would take a couple of days to set up and then configure a portal. We provide user training in the use of the rules editor, typically an initial 1 hour session using your own documentation. And then we provide as much hand-holding and mentoring and knowledge transfer as necessary as we move through. So all of the time, again, as I mentioned before, you're being supported by Stilo in the background. There's also another route where you can go for smaller documents. Maybe if you have got up to maybe 1,000 pages, something like that, or a couple of user guides to convert, we can just actually sort of operate a portal directly. We can convert the documents using Migrate. You would QA the results, and maybe after 1 or 2 tweaks you have the output you want. So we can operate in that more traditional way, if you like, but by taking advantage of the technical capabilities of Migrate. Just to give you some sense of pricing, if you're setting up a portal, a couple of days implementation effort would be at $1,500 a day. We could do portal tailoring. In some cases, people require 0 portal tailoring, and others, maybe if you're implementing particular specializations, it could be a few more days. Conversion credits cost $2.70 each. So in FrameMaker terms, the credits 1,000 characters, which is, as I said before, typically equates to about a page, but this differs from customer to customer and industry to industry. But on average, that's about it. And then you buy individual subscriptions, which include training and user ongoing support, and you can have as many free subscriptions as you like, but they will be unsupported. The other alternative is to do this over the wall conversion, as I mentioned before, where we would charge our own labor rates at $1,500 per day and charge a little bit more for the credits. So that hopefully gives you a sense of how easy or quickly you can get up and running using Migrate. So at that point, we would welcome your questions and open it up, I think, Tom.
Thank you, Les, and thank you, Helen. We do, in fact, have a number of questions from participants, and so let's dive right into those. So the first question came up, Les, earlier in your slides, and it was, does the analyze phase include repeated content, parentheses, reuse opportunity?
It doesn't actually provide that, no. Several customers have asked us for that, and there are some tools out there in the market which can be used at that point. There's a company called Innovation which has a tool called Content Miner, and that can be used to that can be used to basically sort of look across file sets and try to indicate the best opportunities for reuse, either pre-conversion or post-conversion. But we don't have anything directly ourselves.
Okay, good. Next, I think this question came up when Helen was doing the demo, and it was just why were these .mif files instead of .fm files?
Helen?
She's muted. There you go.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah, so we use the .mif, the FrameMaker interchange format. That is the format that Migrate can read and understand, as opposed to the binary FrameMaker format. So though we can convert either one single chapter or an entire book, they would have to be saved as .mif formats first.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this is a bit of a longer worded question, but here we go. So please address the docx file conversion procedure and preparing docx files for conversion while authoring/creating the document in MS Word itself. What steps and instructions should I follow in order to optimize the file conversion procedure? Perhaps there are some template files available, including styles for different topic types or levels of the documents.
Wow, that's an excellent question, and it's so great to have it asked before you start authoring. Yeah, the single most useful thing you can do is to give some indication of your intended topic type. Migrate is pretty good at figuring these things out from context, but it is not going to get it right 100% of the time. So some indication in the Microsoft Word as to topic types is probably the single most useful thing. Various ways you can do it. You can do it with specific style names. That's certainly one way. We've had users who have elected instead to begin the name of the topic with T underscore for task, R underscore for reference, and so on. And actually they like to preserve that in the output file name. So the file name might be R underscore list of options .dita for a reference for their purposes. And then when we actually make the title of that file, of that topic, we would strip out the R underscore. So that's another way that a lot of people have done that. Others just rely on authoring conventions. So, for example, all your concepts might start with the word about, all your tasks might start with a gerund, a word starting with ing, that kind of thing. So there are a number of different things that can be used, but that is certainly probably the best thing to do pre-conversion in terms of eliminating possible post-conversion cleanup. Other than that, I would say it really depends on what your requirements of your output are. For example, if it's really important for you to have some of these inline styling correctly identified to the proper markup, for example, if you are going to be doing some localization, there are a number of things that should not be translated. We need to make sure that we can always correctly identify those elements and mark them not to be translated or to mark them up correctly. So we need to be sure to be able to identify things like command names, because those shouldn't be translated. Those should probably have their own style name or their own formatting in some way that's only theirs, and we can always identify it. I don't know that there are in existence any such templates, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to create some. Great question.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Next question. My content is image heavy. How many credits does an image conversion cost?
Typically that's 2 credits for a FrameMaker drawing. FrameMaker drawings are the only images that we actually do anything with at all.
So we just retain the images and retain links to them. We don't actually convert them to anything.
Okay, thanks guys. What software or format? I think we probably mostly answered this one, but maybe not all of it. What software or format can the source come from? For example, PDF or Microsoft Word. Also, can the source be an ASCII file that has non-structured markup? For example, the source ASCII might contain, well, I'm looking at what's more or less tags and square brackets embedded in ASCII text as the example given. So think of some, or like, I'm imagining things like BB code kind of text. Can you handle stuff like that?
That's a bit of an odd one for us. I think more generally we're working with standard formats which include Word, FrameMaker, RubberHelp, InDesign. We can take XML, we can take, for example, DocBook. We can take HTML, take it to DITA. We can take, someone asked the other day about AuthorIt files. We can work with AuthorIt as well. Some people choose to save out of AuthorIt into Word, and then we've converted that across to DITA. As far as the ASCII question is concerned, I think we need to take a look at it, but there's likely not enough for us to work with there. There may be, but I think we just have to look at an individual sample and respond appropriately, you know.
Good. Thanks, Les.
Yep.
If I'm using a content management system, can the files be sent to my CMS instead of my file system?
Well, it's interesting that, yeah, I mean, Migrate could be made to connect to the CMS. In practice, for legacy content conversion, it's interesting over I guess, a 5-year period. We've never been asked for the integration directly to the CMS for legacy content conversion because typically the Tech Docs team want to be curators of that content prior to uploading it into the CMS. So there's always been that intermediate step. But ongoing, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, we're seeing opportunities where people might want to take contributions from authors or occasional authors, if you like, who might now and again want to push up a Word document or submit a Word document directly into a DITA repository, and we could actually implement that if needs be.
Great, thanks, Les. I think I know the answer to the next one, but I'll let you answer. The question is, do you sell the software?
Well, we sell a service. So the pricing that we outlined was to have your own portal. And so you buy your conversion credits. There's a couple of days it's set up in that process as well, and there's a subscription. So you buy the Migrate, you subscribe if you like, and purchase the Migrate service. Yeah.
Good. I have a follow-up that I think is a quick yes answer, but I want to confirm. This is a follow-up to an earlier question. So basically, if I mark all the different parts of the document using styles or specific topic starting words like warning, this would make a good start for a flawless migration from Word into DITA? Question mark.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that was my thought too. Okay, so I think we'll take just one more question. So is there a way to maintain the structure we already have in our non-DITA solution during the conversion? We have lots of topics that are reused in multiple locations. This is in AuthorIt, and would like to create one conref for each of these topics. Is this possible?
A conref for a topic? Yes, we can do conrefs. I'd have to see the specific thing, but yes, we can create conrefs. So
in principle, yes. What we can typically do is create. I mentioned about those importers that we have in the Migrate architecture. So as I said, Word, Frame, RubberHelp, InDesign. We have importers for each of those formats. If we needed to build some sort of custom importer for AuthorIt, we could probably do so. It would all, whether or not it makes sense to do that financially would depend upon the volumes to be converted, really. But it is quite possible. but it may be possible that we could do that as a services engagement outside of Migrate as well. So it's always just a matter of better understanding precisely what the requirements are.
Okay, really one final question. Do spaces count as characters?
No, they do not.
No, they don't.
Excellent.
Nope.
Okay, and with that,
Nope.
we're out of time. Les, Helen, did you have anything else you'd like to bring up before I shut it off?
A couple of things, just to say thanks very much for the opportunity of presenting, and if for those who might want to talk to us further, then we're going to be at TCon, TC World in Stuttgart in Germany in November, and CMS to the Europe in Munich in Germany in November also. And we have some upcoming webinars of our own. We have Michael Priestley talking about lightweight DITA and the content management ecosystem, and we'll be running another webinar of our own at, talking about AuthorBridge and opportunities for low-cost browser-based contributions from the authoring side. So that was really it, and thanks very much, Tom, for hosting the webinar and giving us this opportunity to present.
Okay, again, thank you, Les. Thank you, Helen. Thanks, everyone, for attending. I hope the webinar was helpful and informational. We will be sending out the slides as well as the recording shortly. Please take a moment to answer the follow-up survey. We would appreciate your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you at an XMetal event in the future. Thank you, and goodbye.